Imagine working overtime for months, sacrificing the vacation you desperately needed, all to see your child's face light up with pure joy. Now imagine watching that sacrifice destroyed in minutes by children who thought vandalism was just harmless fun. This is the story of a father who learned the hard way that family bonds can be tested in the most unexpected and painful ways. What happened next would force him to make a choice that would change his family forever. Thomas Henderson had always been the kind of father who showed love through action rather than words. At 42 years old, he worked as a senior engineer at a manufacturing plant in Columbus, Ohio, where the winter winds cut through the industrial district like invisible blades. His days started at 6 in the morning and often didn't end until well past dinner time. The overtime was brutal, but it paid well, and Thomas had a goal that kept him going through those long, exhausting months. His daughter, Emma, would turn 12 in March. For years, she had been passionate about mountain biking, watching videos online, studying techniques, dreaming of trails she'd never ridden. But the family budget was tight. Thomas's wife, Sarah, worked part-time as a school librarian, and they had a mortgage, car payments, and the endless expenses that came with raising a child. Luxuries were rare. Thomas had been planning a week-long vacation to the Smoky Mountains for over a year. He had booked a cabin, mapped out hiking trails, and even researched the best local restaurants. It was going to be his first real break in 3 years. But then he saw Emma watching a video about custom mountain bikes. Her eyes filled with a longing she tried to hide. That's when Thomas made his decision. He cancelled the vacation. He picked up every extra shift available. He worked weekends and holidays. His co-workers asked if everything was okay at home, and he simply smiled and said he had a project to finish. For 4 months, Thomas barely slept, barely rested, barely existed outside of work and his secret mission. The bike shop he chose was a specialty store in the upscale part of town, the kind of place where serious cyclists spent serious money. The owner, a former professional rider named Marcus, listened as Thomas explained what he wanted. Not just any bike. A custom-built mountain bike tailored specifically to Emma's height, weight and skill level. A bike that would grow with her, that she could ride for years, that would be unmistakably hers. Marcus understood. Together, they designed something extraordinary. A lightweight aluminum frame in a deep metallic purple that shifted to blue in different light. Custom grips in her favorite teal color. Professional grade suspension. Her name engraved on a small plate near the handlebars. Every detail was chosen with Emma in mind. The price tag was staggering, $4,000. Thomas didn't flinch. He had earned every cent of it through sacrifice, through missed sleep, through skipped vacations. He signed the papers and waited 6 weeks for the bike to be built. When Marcus called to say it was ready, Thomas drove to the shop after a 12-hour shift, his hands still grimy from work. He stood in the showroom and stared at the finished product. It was perfect. More than perfect. It was a physical manifestation of a father's love, built from sacrifice and sleepless nights. Marcus helped him load it carefully into his truck, wrapped in protective blankets. Thomas drove home with tears in his eyes, imagining the moment when Emma would see it for the first time. He had given up his vacation, his rest, his personal time, but in that moment, he knew it had all been worth it. March 14th arrived with the kind of crisp morning that promised spring was finally winning its battle against winter. The sky over Columbus was a brilliant blue, and sunlight poured through the windows of the Henderson home, a modest 2-story house in a quiet suburban neighborhood where kids still played in the streets and neighbors knew each other's names. Thomas had barely slept the night before. The bike was hidden in the garage, still wrapped in blankets, waiting. Sarah had decorated the kitchen with streamers and balloons, and the smell of Emma's favorite cinnamon rolls filled the house. It was supposed to be a perfect day. Emma came downstairs at 8 o'clock, still in her pajamas, her dark hair messy from sleep. At 12, she was at that awkward age between childhood and adolescence, tall for her age, but still young enough to get genuinely excited about birthdays. When she saw the decorations, her face lit up with a smile that made all of Thomas's sacrifice feel justified. They had breakfast together, just the three of them, laughing and talking about Emma's plans for the day. She had no idea what was waiting for her in the garage. Thomas had planned to reveal it after breakfast, to walk her out there and watch her face as he pulled back the blankets. But then the doorbell rang. Thomas felt his stomach tighten as he walked to the front door. Through the glass, he could see his older brother, Derek, along with Derek's wife, Michelle, and their two children, 7-year-old Cody and 5-year-old Lily. They were carrying wrapped presents and wearing bright smiles. Thomas and Derek had a complicated relationship. Derek was 3 years older, had always been the more outgoing one, the life of the party. He worked in sales, drove a leased BMW, and lived in a larger house on the other side of town. But Derek had a problem with boundaries. His children, while not intentionally malicious, were allowed to run wild with virtually no consequences. Derek subscribed to a relaxed parenting philosophy that Thomas found irresponsible. Still, it was Emma's birthday. Thomas opened the door and forced a smile. Derek clapped him on the shoulder with too much force, the way he always did, and announced they'd come to surprise the birthday girl. Within minutes, the peaceful morning transformed into chaos. Cody and Lily ran through the house, their voices loud and piercing. Derek made himself comfortable on the couch, asking if Thomas had any beer, even though it was 8:30 in the morning. Michelle chatted with Sarah in the kitchen, seemingly oblivious to the destruction her children were causing. Emma opened their presents first. Derek and Michelle had bought her a gift card to a clothing store. Generic. Impersonal. Emma thanked them politely, but Thomas could see the disappointment in her eyes. Then Thomas said the words he'd been rehearsing for weeks. "Emma, sweetheart, I have one more present for you. It's in the garage." Her eyes widened. "Really? What is it?" "You'll have to come see." The entire group moved toward the garage. Thomas's heart was pounding. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. He opened the garage door, walked over to the covered shape in the corner, and pulled back the blankets with a flourish. Emma's reaction was everything he'd hoped for and more. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, "Dad, is this really mine?" "Every inch of it, custom built just for you." She ran to the bike, running her hands over the frame, the handlebars, the seat. She read her name on the engraved plate and started crying. "I can't believe you did this. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Thomas pulled her into a hug, his own eyes wet. "You deserve it, kiddo. Happy birthday." But then Cody's voice cut through the moment. "Wow, that's so cool. Can we ride it?" Thomas felt his jaw tighten. "No, buddy. This is Emma's special birthday present. Maybe she'll let you look at it, but no one else rides it." Cody's face fell into an immediate pout. Derek laughed. "Come on, Thomas. Let the kids have a little fun. It's just a bike." Just a bike. The words hit Thomas like a slap, but he kept his composure. "It's a very expensive custom bike. I'd prefer if only Emma touched it for now." Emma was already wheeling it out of the garage, eager to try it out in the driveway. The adults followed her outside, and for a few minutes everything seemed fine. Emma rode up and down the street, her face radiant with joy. Sarah took pictures. Even Derek seemed impressed, though he made a comment about how Thomas must have gotten a raise. Then Michelle suggested the kids play in the backyard while the adults went inside for coffee. Sarah agreed, always the peacemaker. Emma carefully leaned her new bike against the side of the house near the back patio and reluctantly followed the other kids to the yard. Thomas should have said something, should have insisted the bike be locked in the garage. But he didn't want to seem paranoid or unwelcoming. He followed the others inside, accepted a cup of coffee, and tried to make small talk with his brother. He should have known better. It started with Lily's innocent question, "Can we make art?" The adults were in the living room, discussing nothing important, when they heard the children's excited voices from the backyard. Sarah had left some old paint supplies in the garage from a recent fence project, washable outdoor paints in bright colors that hadn't been put away properly. Somehow, Cody had found them. Thomas wasn't sure exactly how much time passed. Maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20. He was mid-sentence, telling Derek about a project at work, when he heard Emma scream. It wasn't a scream of excitement or play. It was a scream of pure anguish, the kind of sound that turns a parent's blood to ice. Thomas dropped his coffee mug and ran. Sarah was right behind him. Derek and Michelle moved slower, confused. When Thomas reached the backyard, the scene before him didn't make sense at first. His brain couldn't process what he was seeing. Emma was on her knees on the patio, her hands covering her face, sobbing, and next to her, the beautiful custom bike was unrecognizable. Cody and Lily had covered it in paint, bright pink, electric blue, neon yellow. They had used brushes, their hands, anything they could find. The metallic purple frame was completely obscured. Paint dripped from the handlebars, the seat, the wheels. They had painted over her nameplate. They had turned $4,000 and months of sacrifice into what looked like a kindergarten art project gone wrong. The children stood there, paint-covered and smiling, clearly proud of their work. Lily clapped her hands. "We made it pretty. We made it colorful." Thomas felt something break inside him, not a loud break, but a quiet, definitive snap, the kind of break that changes a person. He stood there, frozen, staring at the destruction of his daughter's dream, his sacrifice, his love made tangible. Sarah gasped, her hand over her mouth. Derek and Michelle finally made it outside. Michelle's first words were, "Oh no, what did you two do?" But her tone was mild, amused even, like this was just a silly childhood mishap. Emma was inconsolable. She tried to wipe the paint off with her hands, but it only smeared worse. She kept saying, "No, no, no," over and over, her voice breaking. Thomas finally moved. He walked over to the bike, knelt down, and touched the paint. It was thick, layered. Even though the paint was supposedly washable, it had been applied so heavily that it was already starting to dry in the warm sun. The custom finish underneath was ruined. The professional work, the careful details, the engraved nameplate, all hidden or destroyed. He stood up slowly and turned to face his brother. His voice came out cold, controlled. "Derek, your children just destroyed a $4,000 custom bike." Derek blinked. "What? Come on, Thomas. It's just paint. It'll wash off." "No, it won't. Look at it. Really look at it." Michelle stepped forward, her tone defensive. "They were just playing. They didn't know." Thomas felt his control slipping. "They didn't know because you don't teach them to ask permission. You don't teach them that other people's property is off limits. You don't teach them anything." Sarah put a hand on his arm. "Thomas, let's all calm down." But Thomas couldn't calm down. Months of sacrifice, of missed sleep, of cancelled vacations, all destroyed in minutes because his brother couldn't be bothered to supervise his own children. Emma was still crying, trying desperately to clean the bike with the bottom of her shirt, only making it worse. Derek's face hardened. "They're kids, Thomas. Kids make mistakes. You're overreacting." "Overreacting? I worked 4 months of overtime for this. I cancelled my vacation. I did everything I could to give my daughter something special, and your kids destroyed it for fun." "It's just a bike." "It's not just a bike." Thomas's voice rose despite himself. "It's every hour I worked. It's every night I didn't sleep. It's my daughter's happiness, and you're telling me to calm down." Cody started crying, sensing the tension. Lily hid behind her mother. Michelle picked up Lily and glared at Thomas. You're scaring the children. Thomas laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I'm scaring the children? Your children just destroyed something priceless, and I'm the problem. Derek stepped between them. Okay, this is getting out of hand. Look, we're sorry. The kids made a mistake. But you need to get some perspective. It's replaceable. With what money, Derek? Do you have $4,000 to replace it? Because I don't. I spent everything on this. Derek's jaw tightened. We'll help clean it. We'll figure something out. But I'm not going to stand here and let you attack my family over a bike. That's when Thomas realized something fundamental. His brother didn't get it. He never would. To Derek, this was just an object. An expensive object, sure, but replaceable. He couldn't see the love, the sacrifice, the meaning. He couldn't see Emma's broken heart or understand that some damages can't be fixed with an apology. Sarah tried again. Derek, Michelle, maybe we should all take a break. Come back inside, we'll figure this out. But Michelle was already gathering her children, her face tight with indignation. No, I think we should go. Clearly we're not welcome here. Come on, Derek. Derek looked at Thomas one more time. For a moment, something like understanding flickered in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by defensive pride. You know what, Thomas? You've always been uptight, always too serious. Maybe if you relaxed a little, you wouldn't be so miserable. The words hung in the air like poison. Thomas didn't respond. He just stared at his brother, this stranger who shared his blood but understood nothing about what mattered. Derek, Michelle, and their paint-covered children left through the side gate. No apology, no offer to pay for damages, just defensive anger and excuses. Thomas stood in his backyard, staring at the ruined bike, listening to his daughter cry. Sarah stood beside him, tears running down her own cheeks. The perfect morning had become a nightmare. The gift of love had become a monument to destruction, and Thomas knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same. The rest of Emma's birthday was spent in a daze. Sarah ordered pizza that no one really ate. Emma retreated to her room, still crying intermittently. Thomas sat in the backyard, staring at the ruined bike, trying to figure out if there was any way to salvage it. He called Marcus at the bike shop, described what had happened. Marcus was silent for a long moment, then said the words Thomas already knew were coming. The custom finish is destroyed. We could try to strip it and repaint, but it wouldn't be the same. And even if we could restore it, you're looking at close to $2,000 in labor and materials. I'm sorry, man, that's a tough break. $2,000 he didn't have. Thomas thanked Marcus and hung up. He sat there until the sun started to set, turning the sky orange and pink, beautiful and indifferent to human suffering. That evening, Thomas's phone rang. Derek's number. He almost didn't answer, but Sarah encouraged him to at least hear his brother out. Thomas answered with a flat, "What?" Derek's voice was stiff. "Look, I talked to Michelle. We're willing to pay to have the bike cleaned. There's a detailing place that does bikes. Should be a couple $100, max." Thomas closed his eyes. "Derek, professional restoration is $2,000, and even then, it won't be what it was." Silence. Then, 2,000? For paint removal? That's insane. They're ripping you off. No, Derek, that's what it costs to undo what your children did. My children made a mistake. I'm not paying $2,000 for a mistake. Thomas felt the anger return, cold and sharp. So what are you paying? I told you, we'll cover a cleaning, a reasonable cleaning, but $2,000, that's on you, brother. You're the one who bought such an expensive bike for a 12-year-old in the first place. That's not practical. That's not smart. Thomas stood up, his hand gripping the phone so hard it hurt. Don't you dare turn this around on me. I worked my ass off for that bike. I sacrificed for it. And your kids destroyed it because you can't be bothered to watch them or teach them basic respect. You know what, Thomas? You've always thought you were better than me. Better father, better person. But you're just bitter and controlling. My kids are creative and free-spirited. They don't need to be micromanaged like you do with Emma. Your kids are out of control because you're afraid to actually parent them. Derek's voice rose. At least my kids aren't so precious and sheltered that they can't handle the real world. At least I'm not crushing them with impossible expectations. Is teaching them not to destroy other people's property an impossible expectation? It was an accident. It was negligence. Your negligence. And now you're refusing to take responsibility. Derek was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. I'm offering $300. Take it or leave it. But I'm not giving you $2,000 for your poor financial planning. Thomas felt something settle in his chest. Certainty. Clarity. Keep your $300, Derek, and keep your distance from my family. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done. I'm done making excuses for you. I'm done pretending your behavior is acceptable. I'm done watching you damage the people I love and call it an accident. You're seriously going to cut me off over a bike. I'm cutting you off because you refuse to see what you did, because you can't apologize, because you're teaching your children that actions don't have consequences, because you looked at my daughter's broken heart and called it an overreaction. Derek laughed, sharp and bitter. You're unbelievable. Mum would be so disappointed in you. And their mother had passed away 3 years earlier. Bringing her up was a low blow, and they both knew it. Thomas's voice went quiet. Mum taught us to take responsibility for our actions. You should try it sometime. He hung up before Derek could respond. His hands were shaking. Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face worried. What happened? He offered $300 and blamed me for buying an expensive bike. Sarah closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm not. I'm done, Sarah. I'm done with him. Thomas, he's your brother. He's a stranger who happens to share my DNA. A real brother would care that Emma's heart is broken. A real brother would take responsibility. A real brother would do whatever it took to make this right. Sarah didn't argue. She knew Thomas well enough to recognize when his mind was made up. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him, and they stood there in the growing darkness, holding each other, while their daughter cried upstairs, and the ruined bike sat in the backyard, like a gravestone marking the death of family bonds. Over the next few days, the extended family got involved. Thomas's aunt called, having heard about the incident from Derek's version of events. According to Derek, Thomas had overreacted to a harmless childhood mistake and was now refusing to forgive innocent children. The aunt lectured Thomas about the importance of family and forgiveness. Thomas listened politely, then explained what actually happened. The aunt went quiet. She promised to talk to Derek. Thomas never heard from her again. Sarah's parents offered to help pay for the restoration, but Thomas refused. They had their own expenses, their own lives. This wasn't their burden to bear. Friends offered advice. Forgive and move on. Family is family. Kids will be kids. Every piece of well-meaning counsel felt like another small betrayal, another person who didn't understand the principle at stake. This wasn't about the bike. This was about respect, about accountability, about teaching children that their actions matter, about refusing to enable destructive behavior just because it came from family. Emma, for her part, surprised Thomas with her resilience. After a few days of grief, she came to him with red eyes, but a determined expression. Dad, I know you worked really hard for that bike. I know you sacrificed your vacation. And I want you to know that even though it got ruined, I'll never forget what you did for me. That means more than any bike. Thomas hugged her and cried. His 12-year-old daughter had more emotional maturity than his 45-year-old brother. 2 weeks after the incident, Derek sent a text message. Just 5 words. I'm not apologizing, move on. Thomas deleted the message and blocked his brother's number. Sarah did the same with Michelle. They made it clear to extended family that Derek and his children were not welcome at their home, their events, their lives. Some people understood. Others called them harsh and unforgiving. Thomas didn't care anymore. He had learned a painful but valuable lesson. Family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down. And when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. 3 months after Emma's birthday, Thomas found himself sitting in a coffee shop across from a mediator. Sarah had suggested family counseling as a last-ditch effort to repair the relationship with Derek. Thomas had agreed, if only to prove to himself that he'd tried everything. Derek arrived 10 minutes late, looking annoyed at having to be there. Michelle wasn't with him. The mediator, a woman named Dr. Patterson with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, invited them both to share their perspectives. Derek went first. He maintained that the incident had been blown out of proportion. His children were young and creative. They hadn't meant any harm. Thomas's reaction had been extreme and hurtful. He was willing to move past it if Thomas would apologize for the things he'd said. Dr. Patterson turned to Thomas. "Would you like to respond?" Thomas had prepared a speech. He'd written it down, revised it, practiced it. But sitting there, looking at his brother's defensive posture and unrepentant expression, he realized the speech didn't matter. Derek hadn't come to reconcile. He'd come to be proven right, so Thomas kept it simple. "I gave up 4 months of my life to create something special for my daughter. Your children destroyed it. You refused to take full responsibility. You blame me for being upset. Until you can genuinely understand why that's a problem, we have nothing to discuss." Derek's face reddened. "So that's it? You're going to throw away our entire relationship over this?" "You threw it away when you refused to make it right." The mediation session ended badly. Derek stormed out, declaring Thomas self-righteous and impossible. Dr. Patterson suggested individual therapy for processing the loss. Thomas thanked her and left. In the parking lot, Sarah was waiting in the car. She looked at Thomas's face and knew immediately how it had gone. No reconciliation. No accountability. She nodded, took his hand. They drove home in silence. That evening, Thomas did something he'd been avoiding. He went online and researched bike restoration specialists. He found one 2 hours away, a master craftsman who specialized in saving damaged custom bikes. The quote was even higher than Marcus had estimated. $2,800. Thomas stared at the number. He didn't have $2,800. He'd depleted his savings for the original bike. But as he sat there, looking at photos of restored bikes on the specialist's website, he made a decision. He called the specialist, explained the situation. The man listened, then said something that surprised Thomas. "I have a daughter too, 11 years old. Tell you what, I'll do it for $2,000, and I'll let you pay in installments. 6 months, interest-free. But I want your daughter to come with you when you drop it off. I want her to see the process, understand what goes into restoration. Deal." Thomas felt tears in his eyes. Deal. 2 weeks later, Thomas and Emma drove 2 hours to a workshop that smelled like paint and metal. The specialist, a man named Robert with calloused hands and a gentle manner, showed Emma every step of the restoration process. How he would carefully strip the paint. How he would repair any damage to the underlying finish, how he would restore her nameplate, how he would make it new again. Emma listened, fascinated. Robert told her, "Your dad loves you very much. This bike represents sacrifice and dedication. When you get it back, every time you ride it, remember what real love looks like. It looks like this." Thomas paid the first installment. They left the bike in Robert's capable hands. On the drive home, Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Dad, I think I understand now." "Understand what, sweetheart?" "Why you're not talking to Uncle Derek anymore. It's not about the bike. It's about respect." Thomas glanced at her, this wise young person he'd raised. "That's exactly right. I think you made the right choice." He reached over and squeezed her hand. They drove the rest of the way in comfortable silence. The bike restoration took 8 weeks. When Robert called to say it was ready, Thomas and Emma made the drive again. When Robert unveiled the finished product, Emma gasped. It looked better than the original. The metallic purple-blue finish gleamed. Her nameplate was polished and prominent. Every detail was perfect. Emma rode it around the parking lot, laughing free. Thomas paid the second installment and thanked Robert profusely. Robert shook his hand. "You're a good father. Don't let anyone tell you different." Back in Columbus, life gradually found a new normal. Emma joined a mountain biking club and made new friends. She competed in her first race and finished third. The bike performed beautifully. Thomas picked up overtime again, not for any specific goal this time, but simply to rebuild his savings. He and Sarah finally took a long weekend trip to the Smoky Mountains, postponed but not forgotten. Derek sent a few more messages over the months, usually around holidays, testing the waters. Thomas didn't respond. Sarah suggested they might regret cutting him off completely, but Thomas was at peace with his decision. Some boundaries once crossed can't be uncrossed. Some damages can't be apologized away. At Emma's 13th birthday party the following year, she invited her biking friends and their families. The house was full of laughter, the backyard full of kids who'd been taught to respect other people's property. At one point, Emma pulled Thomas aside. "Dad, remember last year?" "Hard to forget." "I'm glad it happened." Thomas was surprised. "You are." "Not the bike getting ruined, but everything after. I learned something important, that standing up for what's right is more important than keeping the peace, that real family respects boundaries, that love means sacrifice, and sacrifice deserves respect." Thomas hugged her tightly. "You're pretty wise for 13. I learned from the best." Later that evening, after the guests had left and the house was quiet, Thomas stood in the garage, looking at the restored bike. It hung on the wall now, well-maintained and frequently used. Every scratch it earned now came from adventure, from Emma pushing her limits and growing stronger. He thought about Derek sometimes, wondered if his brother ever understood what he'd lost. Not just the relationship with Thomas, but the opportunity to teach his children accountability, to model genuine apology, to value something beyond his own ego. Thomas had learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, that setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary, that protecting your children sometimes means protecting them from family members who refuse to respect those boundaries. The bike hung there, gleaming in the garage light, a monument not to destruction but to resilience, not to broken relationships but to the ones worth fighting for, not to sacrifice wasted but to sacrifice honored. Thomas turned off the light and went inside, where Sarah and Emma were watching a movie on the couch. He sat down between them, his family, whole and safe and respected, and he knew, without a doubt, that he'd made the right choice. This story raises questions that many of us face in our own families. When someone damages something precious to you, whether it's a physical object or a relationship, where do you draw the line? How much are you willing to forgive, and at what point does forgiveness become enabling? Thomas made a difficult choice. He chose boundaries over family peace. He chose accountability over easy reconciliation. Some might say he was too harsh, that family should forgive anything. Others might say he was too lenient, that he should have demanded full restitution immediately. What do you think? Was Thomas right to cut off his brother? Should he have accepted the $300 and moved on? Or should Derek have paid the full restoration cost? More importantly, how would you handle this situation if it happened to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and we're genuinely curious to hear your perspective. These stories spark important conversations about family, respect, and where we draw the lines in our relationships. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to our channel. We share real stories about real people facing difficult decisions, and we'd love to have you join our community. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And before you go, check out the video we've recommended for you next. It's another powerful story about family conflict and the difficult choices we make when the people we love let us down. Thank you for watching, and remember, respect is earned, boundaries are necessary, and standing up for what's right is always worth it, even when it's painful.